environmental and social impact assessment for Oxbow hydropower scheme. My name is Mark Ananelo Kumalo, and I work for the project management unit in LHDA. I will take you through the presentation, but there is a colleague of mine who will also take over on the specifics of this contract. So I will briefly take you through the project overview, and then we will have a contract scope, the specific procurement requirements. You'll have a briefing on the site visit that will be held tomorrow, and then at the end we will have a question and answer session. As I indicated, my name is Mark Ananelo Kumalo, and I am the functional manager in the project management unit of LHDA. I am responsible for environmental, social, and public health programs under phase 2. I have with me Melissa Moffat, who is the environmental discipline lead. She also sits in the PMU of LHDA. This is a live event on MS Teams, and the session will be recorded. At the end of the session, we will send the link where each one of you can have access to what has been said in this meeting. The link will be available on the LHDA website following this presentation. Please use the chat function on this platform to register your name, your email address, and the company that you're representing so that we can be able to get hold of you. And tomorrow, like I indicated, we'll have a pre-bid site visit where you will also need to register your attendance. Please note that the pre-bid meeting, the pre-bid site visit is not mandatory, but we expect that each of the bidders at least demonstrates that they are familiar with the location of the hydropower scheme. At the end of the session, we will have a question and answer session where you can type in your questions, which will be answered in this session, but we will formally issue a clarification, which formally then answers all the questions that would have been raised in this session. You may all be aware of the issues that were encountered in phase 1 of the project, specifically issues of corruption. So as phase 2, we are committed in ensuring that we do not make the same mistakes. So the project has developed an anti-corruption policy, and we declare conflict of interest if there is any. The anti-corruption policy is included in the RFP, and the proposal submission includes the conflict of interest declaration. What we are saying here is that if you feel like you may have a conflict of interest, please declare that. If you have a relative that's working for the LHDA or a close friend, it's better to declare that other than having to discover that at the end, and then you find yourself at a disadvantage. So please, if you well, even the slightest perception of conflict of interest, please make sure that you declare that so that we can deal with it accordingly. For tomorrow's site visit, we recommend that you use 4x4 vehicles and you drive defensively. You know that the conditions of the roads are not very good. We have potholes, we have areas of the road where the road is very narrow. We have steep gradients and sharp curves, so make sure that you are aware of oncoming traffic as well as those that are following you. These pictures indicate the type of weather that we experienced last week when we were on site. It was raining non-stop. The following morning, it was snowing in November. So just be careful and be mindful of the weather up there and come to the site visit prepared. You'll realize that there's a picture there that indicates the road having been blocked by trucks. That is what we encounter most of the time when we go to site. So just be careful as you drive, especially up the Moteng road. We have donkeys, animals and children crossing the road. And most of the time, they are not very observant of the traffic on the road. So just keep your mind and your eyes open for such incidences. Really, the main reason why we are having the Lesotho Highlands Water Project is so that we can supply water to Gauteng. So way back in 1986, there was a treaty signed between the government of Lesotho and the government of South Africa, which gave way to the implementation of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. And in 2011, then we had a phase 2 agreement that gave rise to the phase 2 project, which includes the hydropower project that we are talking about today. The government, the project is governed by the governments of the two countries, the Lesotho government as well as the South African government, and a body has been established to oversee the implementation of the project. This body is called the Lesotho Highlands Water Commission, and this is made up of representatives from the two countries. We have two bodies that are responsible for the implementation of the projects, both in Lesotho and in South Africa. The TCTA in South Africa, as well as the Lesotho Highlands Development Authority, which is responsible in Lesotho. So under the Lesotho Highlands Water Commission that I mentioned, we have the LHDA board, and then it has different subcommittees. So for phase 2, we have a technical subcommittee which specifically looks into the phase 2, the implementation of phase 2. Then within LHDA, a project management unit was established, which consists of different disciplines from engineers, procurement specialists, environmental and social specialists, as well as administrative staff. We have a panel of both environmental and engineering experts who advise us on specific issues while we manage or we implement the project. The LHDA is, through the project management unit, is responsible for engaging consultants and supervising engineers who then also recruit or procure the different contractors that implement the different packages within the phase 2. We are also responsible for coordinating with the different stakeholders, the governments, the national government, the local governments, as well as the communities that we are working with. Within LHDA, we have a chief executive and a chief operating officer. For the purposes of phase 2, there's a divisional manager. For phase 2, Daden Tolimeike, so I'm not sure if he was able to join us in this meeting. And then in his office, there are different managers. The branch manager for Pudihadi operations, who is based in Tlokweng. We have an executive manager responsible for managing the project management unit, and then still to be engaged is a branch manager for the hydropower component of the project. Just to take you briefly through the different components of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. You all know that Lesotho is within South Africa, and then we have two main rivers that ultimately take water to South Africa and then ultimately to the ocean. So a decision has been made, as I indicated earlier, to harness some of this water to be able to go and assist in Gauteng. Phase 1 of the project included the construction of Katse Dam, which was phase 1 of phase 1A. And then we had the construction of the Mohale Dam, which was phase 1B. We have a tunnel running from Mohale Dam into Katse Dam, as well as a tunnel from the Muela area that takes water all the way to South Africa. So for phase 2 of the project, there's ongoing activities at Pudihadi. We have recently awarded contracts to the dam contractor for construction of the Pudihadi Dam, and then the construction of the Pudihadi Tunnel that takes water from the Pudihadi Dam into the Katse Dam. So this particular project that we are talking about today is part of phase 2, which is the hydropower, the Oxbow hydropower scheme located in Buthabote. So the project will be harvesting water from the upper catchment of the Madiba-Matsu River at the confluence of Tehlanyani and Polohadzi rivers. And then this the Madiba-Matsu is the river that currently flows into the Katse Reservoir. So the project scope for the water transfer includes environmental, social, and health impact studies that have already been undertaken. We have undertaken baseline studies. We have developed, we have undertaken environmental and social impact assessments and developed environmental and social action plans for the different components. We are now implementing different components of the action plans, including the resettlement action plans, the environmental management plans, public health action plans, livelihood restoration plans, integrated management plans, and so on and so forth. And there is also an advanced infrastructure component, which includes roads, bridges, power lines, telecommunications, housing, and so on and so forth. As I indicated, we have recently awarded contracts to the contractors to construct both the Pudihadi Dam and the transfer tunnel. I have already talked about the location of the Pudihadi Dam, but just in brief, we have the Pudihadi Dam on the eastern side, which is located in Mokgotlong. We have different associated infrastructure, as I indicated, the roads, the bridges, power lines, and a comprehensive environmental and social program. And then the water will be transferred from Budihadi Dam to Katse Dam through a 37-kilometer transfer tunnel from the eastern side into the western side of the project. As I have indicated for the water transfer component, we have a similar program for the hydropower component of the project. And we are going to undertake to develop environmental and social impact assessments, as well as resettlement action plans for this program. Then emanating from the impact assessments, we will have the different environmental management plans, as well as all the relevant action plans emanating from that. We are going to have temporary and permanent infrastructure as part of the project, including roads, power lines, telecommunications, houses, buildings and services. We are going to have quarries and a site establishment area, as you will imagine that the nature of the project or the activity involves a lot of quarrying and site establishment for different components of the program. As I indicated, the Oxbow project will be located in Botabote district, and we will be harvesting water from Madiba River. We have an approximately 100-meter high dam that is going to be constructed on the Madiba River near Oxbow. And then we have roads and services where the existing A1 road that comes from Botabote to Mogotlong will be flooded by the reservoir. There's a gated intake structure and a 6.6 kilometer long head race tunnel that is going to be constructed, as well as a portal valve house and a 3.2 kilometer long penstock. As I'm talking, Melissa is showing you where the location of each of these items. We also have a powerhouse that is going to be located at Malefilwane. We'll be able to visit all these components in the site visit tomorrow. And we have a double transmission line, a 132 kV transmission line that to the new Muela substation. And that is approximately 6 kilometers in length. So the scheme is ultimately going to transfer water into the existing Muela dam and the generation of power in that area. As I have indicated, that this hydropower scheme is part of the overall phase 2 project. We have developed quite a number of documents that guide us in complying with the international best standards as well as the national legal framework. We have guidance documents on how to deal with chance finds within the area, how we relocate the graves that may be discovered where we are working. We have guidelines on community complaints, community engagement, and how we communicate with the different stakeholders. So each of the bidders and the service providers in this project should be aware of these guiding documents and make sure that they comply with our guideline documents. So for this particular contract is looking into the environmental and social impact assessment study, which will ultimately be submitted to the Department of Environment for issuance of a record of decision. And the expectation, okay, that ultimately the environmental management plan that emanates from the ESIA and the conditions that are on the record of decision will form part of what the contractors that are ultimately going to be engaged need to comply with. So the slide is just showing you what biodiversity is expected to be found in the highlands of Lesotho. And as environmental specialists, you know the importance of conserving this species for the future generations. We are going to have another session later on today on the resettlement action planning consultant. And those of you who would want to join in that session are welcome to do so. We will share the link on the chat function of this meeting so that if you are interested, you can join us. But we have a robust land acquisition, compensation, and resettlement program, which includes all our stakeholders, especially the affected communities. We manage issues of access to land by the contractors. We make sure that before construction commences, we have acquired the land, we have paid compensation, and we manage the relations between us and our different stakeholders. I'll now hand over to Melissa to take you through the overview of the contract scope. Thank you very much.
Morning, everybody. I assume you can hear me. Thanks, Makananela. That was quite clearly spelled out. I'm going to just go into a little bit more detail. There will be some repetition of information, but this is to guide the ESIA consultants and to provide guidance on how to prepare the proposal. As Makananela indicated, there will be a large dam, approximately 100 meters high, can either be an RCC or concrete-faced rockfill dam. There will be a number of infrastructural changes that you need to assess the impacts of. As we said, road, the A1 National Road close to the current Oxbow Lodge, that will be relocated because it's going to be flooded. There will be a gated power intake and headrace tunnel. So there will be a significant of almost 7 kilometers. There will be a valve house and a 3.2 kilometer long steel penstock or steel pipeline. There's a powerhouse with turbines, and the turbines generate electricity. The electricity will then go by a substation and along a large power line towards Mela. There'll be a tail race channel and then a diversion weir and then another tunnel discharging into the reservoir. I'll show you slides of this infrastructure. Potentially, it's not yet confirmed, there may be another powerhouse with turbines and generators and all the associated electrical infrastructure, such as transformers, at the Moila area. So we're saying potentially there may be a double 132 kV transmission line, those are big transmission lines running towards Moila. We have mentioned there will be local site access roads that need to be upgraded. Some of them are already in place. There will be quarrying. Quarrying involves discussions with the Ministry of turbines. There will be construction sites or plant yards, accommodation for labor, and other work areas that may include laydown areas, temporary construction sites. There'll also be permanent infrastructure, so to run this hydropower infrastructure. So just to quickly go through it again, the Oxbow Dam, or the dam wall, is over there. This is the Maribamatsu River that flows. It will go into Katsi River, eventually goes into Katsi. From this reservoir, you're going to have your headrace tunnel, which we've mentioned. So there will be tunneling there. This area here is quite remote. You'll see tomorrow. We're not going to walk all along here. This red line that you can see here is the existing A1 road. It's very windy. It's a mountainous area. This whole region is known as a biodiversity hotspot. There are trout in the Maribamatsu River, so I'm not sure if there are any indigenous fish left, but that's something that the ESIA would need to tell us. The Oxbow is here. It's going to be flooded. There is some infrastructure here, as was mentioned earlier, the Oxbow Lodge, some recreational facilities that are all going to be flooded, so hence the resettlement aspect. So from the headrace tunnel, which comes along here, the water then goes into a surge chamber and portal house, and then through the penstock or the pipe to this Malipolani powerhouse. In the powerhouse are the turbines and generators that will generate the electricity, which is why we are having this project. That's the ultimate aim, is to generate electricity. There will be a substation here. As I said, this little red line, which is in your terms of reference, is existing A1 road. So off the A1 road is a little track, and this will need to be widened. Here's the Malipolani stream. So from the powerhouse, there'll be access roads, there'll be a transfer weir. And then from there, another tunnel towards Moila over here. This Nkwe powerhouse is optional. It hasn't been decided yet. The design engineers will determine whether that is constructed. The power line will run from the source of the energy from here, from this substation to a new substation at Moila. This whole area is mountainous. Those of you who come on the site visit will see tomorrow. It's remote. You have villagers living here in the lower lying areas. But up here it is very few people apart from the herders, and the mountains are high. The main objective of this contract is to undertake an environmental and social impact assessment for this scheme. And the reason we're doing that is to inform site selection. So we don't know where all the infrastructure is going to be located. As EIA consultants, you look for alternative options. You'll work closely with the engineers to inform their designs. The information will be used to develop the environmental specifications and health and safety specifications, as well as monitoring requirements. So this component of the hydropower scheme is important. The EIA or ESIA has to comply with the national legislation. Lesotho has an Environment Act, a Water Act. It's a member of the biodiversity protocols. We also, because of funding, we need to comply with international best practice. So your IFC performance standards would apply. And then for information, during the feasibility stage, the engineering consultants had an environmental team who prepared a project brief, and they undertook a preliminary ESIA. Just for you to be aware that these two documents have not been reviewed or approved by the department. They are there to inform the engineering studies, but we will make them available to anybody who wants to see them. I think they may be included in the terms of reference if I'm not mistaken. But a lot of work has already been done. You can refer to that and make an informed opinion as to whether it's adequate or whether it's a lot more information is needed, but it's useful as a guideline. The EIA team is led by a team leader. The points allocation are highest for this team leader. This person is very important. We anticipate the team leader would be managing all the different specialists, your ecologists, both terrestrial and aquatic, your water quality and waste management specialist, cultural heritage specialist, social, public health, consultation, and then all the admin staff, your GIS. There are a whole range of people that would be associated with an EIA of this nature. As we've indicated, the infrastructure is large scale. We're talking of a big dam or high dam, and in a remote area, access roads have to be constructed to the dam site. In a very high and a mountainous area, we are working in sensitive environments, the Marabomatsu River and the various other rivers. We're working amongst communities in the lower lying areas. So this is quite a, I won't say complicated, but it's a significant environmental impact assessment that we anticipate is required. The area has rangeland. Lesotho are very dependent on grazing in the highland areas, so the rangeland will be lost. That's an impact to assess. As I mentioned, it's a biodiversity hotspot, so there may be flora and fauna that need to be identified and mitigation measures put in place. The environmental flow requirements, water is going to be dammed. From the Oxbow Dam, it flows down till it reaches Katsi, that section. The environmental flow requirements will need to be determined. It's a riparian habitat, so we need an aquatic ecologist. Tunneling waste, construction waste, and then in addition to these key staff, we do allow consultants to say, you've missed out on another specialist study, but you're welcome to motivate for additional studies. But for us to be able to assess and compare your proposal with other EIA consultants, do not include the cost of such additional specialists in your financial proposal. Just submit a motivation, and if you are successful, we can negotiate. Just a brief outline of the typical deliverables for the ESIAs, and this is based on our experience with a water component. Initially, you'll prepare an inception report that is confirming what you undertook to do in your proposal. You might have come across additional information and you would like to revise it. Typically, the budget doesn't change much, the time doesn't change, but it's confirming your proposal. And it's based, this report will be based on a detailed site visit where all your specialists go to the field and have a look around and say, okay, this is what we plan to do. Each specialist is required to prepare a standalone report or specialist study. We will require a public participation standalone report and all the different components associated with your stakeholder consultation. You're working in a country where, in addition to English, you have Sesotho as a national language. So every significant document, your executive summaries need to be translated into Sesotho. Your newspaper ads, you'll do an English and a Sesotho one. Ideally, your stakeholder consultation expert should be fluent in Sesotho. You're dealing with rural communities. The documents would need to be placed on the website. again in the public participation, specifically in Sesotho. You'll prepare a draft environmental impact study and a draft ESMP, typically volume 1 and 2. Submit that to us as the client for review, and then this may require several iterations. It just depends on the quality of the work we get. The final environmental impact statement and management plan will be submitted to the Department of Environment. Based on our experience with the water sector, the DOE will appoint an external reviewer who is an expert in hydropower projects and in the field of environmental impact assessments. They may come across aspects that you haven't addressed and require additional studies, or you need to address more thoroughly. So it's difficult to cost for that, but just be aware that the quality of your work really has to be top notch. It will be reviewed by experts. And then at the end of it all, a deliverable that sometimes slips through the cracks is a project closeout report. We expect you to summarize the whole process. It's in the RFP. In addition to managing an EIA team, or environmental impact and social team, the team leader has several other responsibilities. Project management, contract administration. We will require monthly progress reports, monthly progress meetings. Each month, particular risks need to be identified. We do not want to receive poor quality specialist reports, and we need to edit them. This is the role of the quality management of every single document we receive is the responsibility of the consultant, not the client. Time management, as always, these projects are allocated a specific time. Delivering on time, as indicated in your proposal, is something that is required. Cost overrun, you're putting in a proposal with a fixed budget. It's a whole rigmarole to vary that budget, so work out your cost as accurately as you can, and then managing your resources, your key staff and your technical staff. In addition to project management and administering your contracts, you will be required to coordinate with various entities, including the engineers, including the RAP consultants, and by engineers we mean the design consultant. You will need to interface with government departments, with NGOs, including, for example, water affairs, rangeland management, and Department of Environment, Department of Culture. So there's a whole coordination aspect that you need to include in your proposal. And then, as indicated in the RFP, there is a skills development component where we would like to allocate 2 young professionals, or YPs we call them, in the environmental and social field. And these are typically graduates, to work with your team, and then it's your responsibility to upskill them and make them aware of environmental and social consulting aspects. The cost of such YPs is for the client. For example, their accommodation in Lesotho and their monthly payment or remuneration. So that's, in a nutshell, the project. As I say, it's not insignificant. And now the next section is, it's quite long, but it's instruction to others. The phase 2 has a specific list of documents that need to be completed. And we have to satisfy both the Lesotho government and the government of the Republic of South Africa. So our aims are, in terms of the treaty that in the phase 2 agreement that Makananelo referred to earlier, Article 10, competitiveness, everything has to be transparent, as cost effective as possible, and we look at quality. Preference counts 20 out of 100 points. So preference shall be given to suppliers of goods and services in first Lesotho, then South Africa, then the SADC member states, and then lastly at the end of it, international consultants. You may form joint ventures. Preference margins, specifically JVs with Lesotho counterparts is recommended, you'll see. And the whole idea behind this is to encourage capacity building and skills transfer. Okay, so you've all downloaded the request for proposal documents. You'll see there are 11 different sections. The first one is a letter of invitation. It needs to be signed by an authorized entity, maybe the project director, and then authorized by a lawyer or commission of oaths. It is quite clearly spelled out. Section 2, instruction to bidders. There's 2A and 2B. Go through it very carefully. Terms of reference. Do not give us back our terms of reference. Tell us how you're going to approach this project. Section 4, technical proposal and financial proposal. Go through these two very carefully. They are linked. The difference is Section 4 has no financial information. But what you do in Section 4 informs Section 5, which is the financial, the costing. Signatures are required. Section 4, we want information about your organization. Do not include company brochures. We don't look at them. It's just a waste of paper and it's expensive. Rather, address the request for information. Tell us who you are, structure, tell us how you're going to do the work. As we mentioned earlier on, there's Section 6 is an anti-corruption policy. Go through it. It's not negotiable, and we take this very seriously. Section 7 talks about evaluation criteria. It tells you about the key staff, the qualifications, the experience we require, and it's important that you meet those criteria. Do not submit somebody who has no who doesn't meet, say for example, doesn't have a degree. If the evaluation requires a degree, otherwise that person will be scoring 0. Section 8 and 9 are mostly contractual, so it's your bank details, it's guarantees that are required, and we looking at the FIDIC White Book, so there are particular conditions. Section 10 is to guide you in terms of tax requirements. There's withholding tax, there's specific issues regarding that. And then 11 explains how you submit your invoices and how you get paid, and the frequency and the process. The RFP has been advertised in both Lesotho's newspapers and on the LHDA website and in South African newspapers. Read the RFP carefully, your bid document. Do not go and develop your own templates, because it just will lose you points. We have a specific format that we want you to follow. We've provided you with templates, use them. The minimum pass rate technically is 70%. And we open the technical proposals, we evaluate them. Those who score less than 70% are not eligible for further evaluation. The lowest price does not mean that you're necessarily going to get the work. No late tenders accepted. 2 o'clock is the cutoff time. Give yourselves enough time to get the documents here. Remember, you are submitting to a different country. It takes longer than you think to get here, your bid documents. Please refer to this LHDA website for information continuously. The specific procurement requirements. This is section 2, where I mentioned 2A and 2B. The closing date is 2 o'clock on the 13th of February. It's a Monday. It's not negotiable. 1 second past 2 and your document will not be accepted. It is simply not negotiable. Follow the formats set out in section 2A. Make sure that your submissions are signed by the suitably authorized person and the power of attorney. We've had to throw bids out because the documents were not signed. Please read these documents carefully. Give yourself enough time to prepare these, your proposal. These clauses, go and look at them. They will tell you on what basis you could be ineligible or disqualified. Then section 2B, we talk about preference scoring. Again, it's described in detail in section 7, but Lesotho national consultants must be more than 10%, Black-owned enterprises more than 20% of the South African total, South African consultants at least 20%. So there's certain conditions of award. If you don't meet these conditions, you will not be successful. As I mentioned, section 2B has got specific details. There's this mandatory pre-bid meeting. A 2-envelope system means 1 financial, section 5A to E in the 1 envelope, and then the technical section 4A to 4J in a separate envelope. You take these 2 separate envelopes, put them into 1, and submit them. You may submit electronically, so put it on a CD or online. As different to the engineering bids, we want you to submit your proposal in Maloti. Remember, 1 Maloti is 1 rand. They are the same. Your bid must be valid for 120 days. You have until 14 days before the bid submission to request clarification. So the end of January. We don't just respond to the bidder who's requested clarification. We share the clarification with every bidder who's registered. And then once the bids have been submitted on the 13th of Feb, that's it. We will not be communicating with you unless we need clarification. For example, is this your key specialist? If we require clarification, we'll be in touch with you. So you may associate with others in a joint venture, or you may have sub-consultants. Remember, 1 key specialist per consultancy. You can't have your public participation specialist part of your bid and somebody else's bid. We'll place a list of all the bidders who submitted bids on the LHDA website within 7 days. Negotiation is typically in Maseru, but we'll confirm it. You must indicate your key staff availability and ensure, as I just said, that they only appear in 1 proposal. The contract award information will eventually be posted on the LHDA website. It does take a month or 2, 3. So just briefly, section 7, Lesotho national firms condition of award must be more than 10 at least. You need to either be a Lesotho consultant submitting a bid, or if you're South African or any other nationality, you need to link up with the Lesotho consultant or individual. Black-owned South African enterprises, condition of award must be at least 20% or more of the total South African costs. Lesotho national individuals, there's a percentage of the total staff fee they need to be part of. Same with South African Black individuals. Women in key positions, you will get points depending on how many women you have. It's in section 7. Youth, you get preference points depending on the percentage of their total time input, and the description of what constitutes youth is described. Persons with disabilities, again, you will score some points, and similarly for skills development. These are all aspects that we look at in terms of preference. 20% of the 100%. Please refer to the LHDA website. There's a section on guidelines that explains what I've just gone through now. Please provide all the information required. Use the templates. Consider what would disqualify you, and follow the instructions to bidders. If we ask for references and you don't submit them, you will lose points. If we ask you to, for example, refer to key staff in the projects that you send us, that you submit, and they know the key staff you propose have not been in any of the projects you've done before, you will lose points. Just briefly, some details of the applicant, which would be the consultant and the project organization. If you've never worked on large EIAs, then I suggest you form a JV or work with sub-consultants. You need to demonstrate to the evaluation team that you have the relevant experience, that you've got adequate staff, and that your team is able to undertake this rather complex ESIA. So if you have experience on similar large construction or civil projects in the area, they're not necessarily hydropower because they're few and far between, but this is where you can score points in your methods and approach. Tell us that you've worked in the area or similar areas and you know what to expect. Include the projects in your project data sheets. These are the templates we're referring to. Show services provided. There are certain sections, and often people just don't fill them in. If you don't know, then ask us. Key staff who've worked on these projects, put their names down. We can't assume, I know so-and-so, therefore he or she is a really good specialist. Unless it's written down and demonstrated and described, we don't know that. As I said, provide client references. Key staff, as I said, the highest point is for your ESIA team leader, and then each of the key staff have similar points, or worth similar points. Use the CV template. Don't give us any old template. We don't want it. We provided you with a template for CVs. Please indicate roles and responsibilities. Don't just say so-and-so's worked on War ESIA. Tell us what they did. Academic requirements are mandatory. If you don't meet the academic requirements, each CV that doesn't meet it will get a 0, no points. CVs must be signed by the specialist or the team leader. We do confirm, and it's a small consulting world, we generally know. So if we see something that looks a bit dodgy, we will definitely follow up and check. Typically, we may require the key staff to be interviewed, not always, but the key staff may need to be interviewed during the negotiation stage, definitely company directors and the ESIA team leader. Level of effort, if you don't indicate what this person has done, you won't score highly. And we've seen it before. Every single CV is important. Take time to identify the best possible person you can. And if you, for example, are using a Lesotho consultant or specialist, discuss the project with them. Do not assume that they know what you're talking about. Go through their CV, tell them what it needs to look like, and assist them. We're getting close to the end. As I mentioned earlier on, there is the ESIA team leader is almost the most important person in your bid. They have a lot of responsibilities. Please go onto the DOE website. There are specific requirements for an ESIA team leader. It can't just be any old person. They've got to have certain qualifications and certain experience, and that's mandatory. The specialists, there are quite a number of them. As I said, discuss the requirements, particularly if you are South African based and you intend to use the Lesotho counterpart. Spend time with this person. The CVs must meet your RFP, request for proposal requirements. Do not give us a social specialist under riparian. We've had that as well, where clearly the wrong person has been, the wrong CV has been submitted for the wrong person. Provide enough time for each specialist. Specifically, Lesotho is at least a day's travel from Johannesburg. So if you're driving down, give yourself a day. Remember, Lesotho is a country separate to South Africa. You need passports. Look at the master program timelines. The key staff may be marked down if their inputs are not adequately described. The whole team is accountable for delivering the service, and the service essentially is your environmental and social impact statement in ESMP. If you're late or fail to meet other contractual commitments, there will be penalties. So if you say you're going to commit to certain preference goals and you don't meet them, you will be penalized financially. And then the site visit, you depending on where you're coming from, you turn in at Fariesburg or at Vicksburg, which is a bit further down here. There's a section of road between Fariesburg and the border post, which is known as Caledon's Poort. From there, you drive towards Butabuti. Just before you get to Butabuti, there's a turnoff that takes you onto the A1, so you don't necessarily need to go into the town. It's this little bypass road. You go along this road all the way up, and here you start climbing into up the Moteng Pass. We're going to meet at the top there. This road is very windy. People travel at great speed, so drive defensively. We're going to start at 11. I recommend you wear these luminous vests for visibility. And then during the site visit, please stay with the train of vehicles. There are going to be a lot of vehicles up there tomorrow. Look for the ones that have the LHDA logo and stay with them. And we're going to now move to the question and answer session. Use the Teams chat function. Verbal responses are for guidance. So if I say something, do not take it as gospel. Only written statements will be taken as binding. So if we issue clarification or an amendment to the bid, we will issue it to everybody. If you write to us and request clarification, we will respond. But you have to follow a certain procedure, which is using this email address, procurement@lhwp2pmu.co.ls. It's on the website. And that's the presentation. So I'll just go back to the teams and then see if there are questions. Thank you. Okay, let me just go to the top and then we'll answer questions as we go along. Right, so please, I'm not sure how it's been communicated, but in the chat session, please put your name and your consultancy. I see, for example, some people have Barent and Tato and Swetsi. All of you who've attended, just note down in the chat session. scrolling down here. Pre-bid meeting. Here's the link for the resettlement action plan is this afternoon at 3 o'clock. The penstock, my understanding is the penstock will be an above ground pipeline. It's not going to be underground. If you submit that question to us in writing, we'll confirm. It also depends on the final designs, but right now the understanding is that the penstock, which is a steel pipeline, will be above ground. And then Tanya asks, may one company tender for both ESIA as well as the design and construction supervision for Oxbow Hydropower? Tanya, we haven't excluded that. Just have a look in the, I think it's in section 2, where there's a certain amount that one construction company may not exceed. So again, submit this question to us in writing and we'll respond. But there is a limit to the amount, financial limit to what you may bid for collectively. And then Amin asks, has there been any shortlist stage? The bid is open to everybody. There has been no request for expression of interest or shortlists or pre-quals. This is it. The specialists, Jane, do not necessarily need work permits. It is quite a tricky aspect. It's not like the engineering firms who come to Lesotho for months at a time. What we would do is we would issue you with correspondence saying this is the team, these are the people, they have they're working for the LHDA, and please afford them a week in Lesotho or whatever it is. So you'd need to, if you were the successful bidder, write to LHDA, and we would then issue you with this documentation. Are there sufficient Lesotho specialists to meet the exclusivity requirements? We believe there are. Just bear in mind, Lesotho has had a large number of large infrastructure projects in recent years. So there are experts, a lot of Lesotho experts are now in South Africa, but I do believe there are. And then Ntwetsi asks, it's a JV partner or sub-consultant allowed to tender for both the ESIA and resettlement? I would say you are. Again, submit the question to us in writing and go and look specifically at section 2, where there's that financial cap, where you're not allowed to bid for a certain amount, more than a certain amount of work. Lutendo asks, clarify if we need to include a water use license as an additional in the technical proposal. Lutendo, when you're doing the ESIA, you would need to, and particularly you need to go and look at the water legislation, the national Lesotho water legislation. A water use license is required. It's not as onerous as what a South African EIA consultant who has to apply for a South African water use license. It's nothing like that, but go and inform yourself, read the Water Act, and where it would apply. Licenses that come to mind are your water use license and your blasting, quarrying, and your quarrying license, which you apply from Lesotho Department of Mines and Minerals. If an appointment is first quarter, some specialist work may have to be done in less than the optimum season. If that's a concern, put it in your proposal and indicate how you would like to do it. If it's a limitation, I mean, assumptions and limitations, your proposal does allow for that. So express that concern and indicate how you're going to address it. And then I've got a question here. The transmission power lines, are they part of the project requiring AV faunal inputs? No, these are very much part of this ESIA. We have 6 kilometers of large power lines, potentially double power lines. So you need an AV faunal expert, which could be the terrestrial faunal specialist, or if you think you need a specific AV faunal specialist, as I indicated, list that, but do not cost that additional resource in the financial proposal. But you may motivate and indicate why you think we need that particular specialist. But certainly the transmission lines, the substations, all the electrical infrastructure forms part of this ESIA. And then Selena asks, can a company attending the pre-bid meeting make a JV? You may, assuming that you would be the lead partner, or part of it, your company would at least be a member of the JV. Again, Selena, I would ask you to put this request for information in writing, and we will respond formally. I'm not sure who this person is whose hand is up. We are not taking verbal questions, Siami. Please use the chat function. How do I register for attendance, Tiami? Put your name, your company name here in the chat function, and then in your bid document, there is a pre-bid meeting attendance register. Complete that and include it in your proposal submission. So just put your name here, and if you're an individual or whether you represent a company, just write it here in the chat function. Thank you. Sure if I've missed anybody. Yeah, just put that in the proposal and or submit a request for clarification if you feel you need to. So while I have given some input here, if you want detailed inputs, please use the LHDA website, write your query down, submit it to us in writing, and we'll formally respond to everybody. I think we've been going for 1 hour and 10 minutes. If there are no further questions, I just want to remind everybody, please put your details in the chat function. And best of luck. Just a reminder, the RAP pre-bid meeting is this afternoon. Eddie and Makananella will be running with that. Tomorrow, please don't forget your passports if you are driving down. Give yourself enough time, and we're leaving at 11. So I'd just like to say thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and best of luck. Thank you. I'll now declare the pre-bid meeting closed.